A&B Properties is Quincy's largest apartment rental company with hundreds of units available. They offer short-term and long-term rentals with 1 up to 4 bedroom apartments. A&B Properties meets the needs of its tenants with care, compassion, and a quality of service that exceeds expectations. A&B Properties also has a convenient tenant app for you to do your payments or make repair requests. Give them a call today. A&B Properties, 217-919-8080, Quincy.
When did you move to Quincy?
When I moved to Quincy?
Yeah.
I moved to Quincy in October of 2011.
Okay.
It was right when the Cardinals were going in the World Series, and I I moved from Michigan. I've always been a Detroit Tigers and a Lions fan, but I was a Tigers fan, and I started rooting for the Cardinals because the Tigers had just been eliminated by the Rangers, and the Rangers could do no right, and I was in the region, so I was like, hey, go Cardinals or whatever. But I have no allegiance towards the Cardinals.
You're from Troy, Michigan?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My wife is from Brighton, Howell, Michigan. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, well, Howell's different than Brighton.
Totally different. Totally different.
Howell's got some not so good history behind it, but Brighton's fine.
Oh yeah, Howell's got the weird, the bad stuff. Go ahead, go ahead and spit out some Howell, Michigan game.
Oh, it's apparently where a Grand Master for the Ku Klux Klan was at one point.
Yeah.
So that was not so hot, but
yeah. Well, my wife's family wasn't a part of that.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
They lived on a little dirt road in the middle of Howell, Michigan. David Samuels, everybody, on this edition of Frankie Say. Very happy to have you here.
Thanks for
This
having
is
me back.
This is your second time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why we brought you back. Very happy with you. So, what is your involvement at Quincy Community Theater?
Yeah, so I'm currently the board president of the Quincy Community Theater.
Okay, and what do you do when you're not being president of that board?
When I'm not president of that board, hopefully I'm taking care of my son and my family, but I also work at General Mills right now.
Okay.
But I'm currently on parental leave, which is a phenomenal benefit, and I strongly recommend it. It's enabled me to spend a lot of time with my son as he's now 8 weeks old, so it's fun.
Oh, 8 weeks? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations to your wife, more importantly.
Yeah, she did all the work.
She did 99.99999% of the work.
Yeah.
You had some very small input at the very beginning.
Small contribution.
Extremely small contribution.
This,
no offense.
By the way, this, did you see that?
What?
This is October of 2011. It's the Rangers and the Cardinals. That's the...
Yeah, what you surprised that Bob Goff
No, I'm
and
not
David Adam
surprised
are going to
at all
have
that
coasters that represent the October 27th, 2011 World Series Game 6 of Texas against the Cardinals.
The David Freese home run in the ninth, right?
Is this thing worth a lot of money? Looks like it is.
I mean, it's nice. Yeah.
In the green room, so a few things here. We'll talk about what we were talking about in the green room.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some housekeeping issues
Okay.
that we have to talk about.
Yeah.
So next week, I will be out of town. This is very rare for me to take a family vacation. My family, we're not a big vacation family. I wish we were,
Okay.
but we're just not. But going on a small vacation, my house will be heavily guarded with pit bulls and
presumably you won't be there, so there'll be hungry pit bulls. Is that
we
the
will be there.
implication?
I don't even know why I'm talking about this. No, don't even worry. Don't anybody try to come to my house while I'm gone. You'll regret it. But we will not be doing Frankie Say next week.
Okay.
So this is an episode that we have to really hit hard.
Okay.
We got to go hard in the paint, okay? I notice you've got something from Electric Fountain Brewing here.
Yeah.
Because you put some what in here?
Yeah, so I have an espresso martini that I gave to you, and I gave one to Bob, and I had half of a one twice. And yeah, I love making cocktails, and I feel like for an espresso martini, the critical component to an espresso martini is espresso. So I picked it up from EFB. Strongly recommend. I'm a huge fan. I've been going there.
Electric Fountain Brewing.
Yeah, since they're
In the district, on the promenade.
yeah, I just like huge amount of respect for like to Ryan to like roast his own coffee. I think that takes a lot of guts, and I admire that. And I feel like it's worth paying a premium to get the best stuff. And if you can get a local roaster, wherever your region is, that's kind of the best way to enjoy coffee. And I strongly recommend it.
Some of the tasting notes here: cinnamon, clove, hibiscus, lemon, pear. And it says winey, which, it does have like a beautiful wine kind of richness feel to it. And it's all organic, which I love.
Yeah.
This is the Ethiopian brew.
Yeah. And
he does a good job.
Yeah. And I would actually say, like, I don't necessarily have a favorite one of his beans per se. I generally choose the beans based on the date it was roasted. So like this one, they listed on there, this is on the 16th. So this was roasted 6 days ago. And I can brew that all of this week, and it's phenomenal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
In the green room, you and I talked about some possible topics. We kicked around the idea of talking about billionaires in general. If the money was taken out of politics, would billionaires have less impact? Yes or no? We were going to talk about this idea from working from home, whether or not it's killing the spirit of work and American productivity. The Iranian president being killed in a helicopter crash, or helicopter or plane crash?
It's helicopter.
A helicopter, okay.
I don't know if he was being killed. He passed away.
He wasn't killed?
We don't know.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I don't know if he was
Okay.
particularly shot down or something like that.
No, but like you can be killed, like just driving your own car, can't you?
I suppose, but I think that implies
I'm
a
not-
verb that someone was doing this
Oh,
to you.
oh, you're kidding me. Okay.
intentionally.
Wow, we can get into that. The idea, another topic that we were thinking about maybe discussing is whether or not our leaders think that Ukraine and Israel are more important than domestic issues, because it seems like that to me.
Oh.
I wanted to talk talking about the taxing pyramid being upside down, about how we argue locally about all of these city programs when we're paying so much money to the feds, but we're not paying that much money to our neighbors. I think that might be kind of upside down. I don't know.
I would love to switch that
And
around.
then another thing, there's 3 other things that we were going to talk about. It was maybe pair bonding in relationships. Should dating always lead to marriage? The other 2 were Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Because you want to talk about it, not
That's
me.
right.
And then the Chiefs kicker,
Yeah.
the Kansas City Chiefs kicker. Can we start with the Kansas City Chiefs kicker?
Yeah.
His name's Harrison Butker.
That's right.
And you gave me a really nice article from, from Forbes.com. And essentially, I looked at this and I pulled it up, and it's got Harrison Butker's controversial commencement speech in full. Did you go through this? Did
Yeah.
you look at this?
Oh yeah.
What were some of the things that, let me ask you, so looking at the key facts here, anybody who wants to go, you can Google, if you're taking a look at what we're talking about, you can pause this pod, you can type in, here's Harrison Butker's controversial commitments speech in full from Forbes, Forbes.com, okay? And I wish I could send this all to all of you right now, but you're just going to have to look for it. Put us on pause and look for it. Anyway, what are some things that, were there any things that bothered you?
Any things that bothered me?
Were there any things that bothered you about the speech?
Well,
because that's
I
fair.
would start off and say there are definitely some elements that I agreed with and disagreed with. And like the stuff I agreed with is he mentioned like, hey, it's the foundation of a Christian belief is still controversial in 2024. And I agree to that because, but I don't necessarily agree to why that is. I think that being a Christian and like the values that Christ had, for example, of like, hey, love your enemy. I think that's a challenge to do, and I think that we as Christians are called to do that, and I see a lot of Christians in open society not follow that. I also think that like renouncing your worldly possessions and, focusing on loving God, and I think that that's also a challenge that, again, I struggle with too. But I feel like he was talking about things that I don't think are necessarily a big challenge for Christians in 2024.
Like what?
Well, he talked about how like COVID was like had a big impact in to me. I'm like, COVID had a big impact because 1 million people died, not necessarily that folks had to work from home, or that like we didn't get to go to like our live sporting events. It was annoying, and I wish that we got to, but I just feel like in a pandemic setting that it was just these are some of the sacrifices that you had to make, similar to the ones that like my grandparents had, that they grew like freedom gardens in World War II as and told to like cut back on eating meat and do what it takes for the cause. I felt like this was my time, that obviously it was a zeitgeist moment where everyone knows kind of what they were doing during the pandemic, that it's like, okay, I can make small sacrifices and just stay home and not necessarily go out to eat, and it'll be okay. And as it turns out, I was okay.
Yeah. I wonder, though, I think long-term, a lot of this backfired. This idea that the government, the central planners, were saying things like, not only should you not go out to eat, but you may not go out to eat. So I think all the people that wanted to sacrifice, and this is in hindsight, but it's also at the time. I mean, I felt the same way at the time than I do now. I did go through a moment of panic for about 2 weeks at least, where I really thought, like, wow, this is going to happen. We're going to die. Or at least 10% of the population is going to die. Or like it's going to be some like meteoric, absolutely terrible thing. But I think what this kicker from the Chiefs is talking about is it's half of what you're saying. The people that this idea that people were banned from going to live events. Here's the problem with that. I think this is where he's coming from. I think he's coming from where I'm coming from. I think is that when you tell the entire population you are not allowed to work, you are done. You are not allowed to work. That's never happened in my lifetime. I don't think it's ever happened in our grandparents' lifetime. The government said that you're not allowed to work. And then after they said, which is, you better be damn sure that you're right. And they're wrong. And we can debate that. But I think they were wrong. I do think, remember how they said it's just a really, really bad strain of flu that's going to kill people? Do you remember that?
Folks did say that. I think that it was still like, I think I trust like the doctors that were speaking that, hey, we should definitely be alarmed about this. Was there an overreaction? Some people might say yes, but I would say that like, hey, the minor changes in my life, which let's be clear about this, I was blessed in a way that, hey, I had a job that I could work from home and I didn't have to go into the office. And I think that was different at that point in time. That was a different job that I feel like it was a small sacrifice, and like frankly there was an opportunity that I was able to enjoy, like staying home and not less travel and spending more time with my wife and not like commuting back and forth. There were some positives to that, and obviously there were negatives too, because it's like, I feel like if any like culture that you go into work, you can build like good relationships with folks, and like you miss those folks when you're not going in, you don't see them, and there's elements to it that it's like I can see both sides of the argument. I don't think anyone should be outraged and like pounding their chest about it.
Okay. So this kicker, he wasn't just talking just about COVID. I mean, so I tend to lean toward this Butker guy. And you can lean a little bit away from him. That's what makes us American. He said a couple of things about in this article in Forbes. It said Butker told the women in the class they'd been told diabolical lies about pursuing careers, and that his and his family's success is a result of his wife's focus on being a mother and a wife, claiming that, quote, Her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother, end quote. Shots fired, right?
Well,
How pissed off are the feminists?
Well, I would say that I believe that if, they can speak their truth and what that is, I think that's great. I find problem when you start saying you ought to, or you should, or you ought, this is the way it ought to be or whatever. That maybe a large group of that, or maybe a large section of the group receiving that message believes that. And I think that that's great if that's their choice. But that should be a choice, right? I think that not all of them are going to be called to be mothers, and that's okay too. It doesn't make them any less of a person just because they don't want to pursue that element.
I think you're arguing a separate point, though. I think you're arguing a point that he's not making. I don't think he's saying, at no point is he saying, all of you who don't choose to be mothers, you are less than a person. We're going to declassify you into second-class citizens. He's not saying that. So that's just something that I find to be, I hear that argument a lot.
And like, I mean, I would add on to that. It's like, first of all, like if you rewind 70 years, it was common that there was incomes that would be able to sustain a family, and you could have a single income family. And that reality doesn't necessarily exist in the broad spectrum of things in 2024. It's not that it doesn't exist, because obviously Harrison makes an income working at the NFL and working for the Chiefs, that he's able to sustain that, his wife is able to stay home and take care of the kids. What a blessing that is. That should be like cheered, and that she's able to do that. But I think for most of society, that's not a choice. And if you look at home prices and what the average income is in 2024, the average home price is based on two incomes, not one.
Well, you know what causes that level of cost pain, right?
Well, there's lots of factors.
Yeah, but also one of the reasons why it's so difficult to live on one income is because of inflation. The reason why inflation is such a big deal is because the government told everybody they're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to work. They screwed up the supply chain, and then they printed 40% of all of the currency currently in circulation was printed over the past 4 years. It's like all of the money.
You're talking about the M1?
I'm saying, yeah. I mean, M1 and M2. I mean, the amount of money supply, there's so much money being printed. To his point, he's saying, here are what I heard him saying, which, by the way, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. This guy's a Catholic talking to a bunch of students at a Catholic college, a hardcore Catholic college called Benedictine, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Catholics talking to potentially Catholics. And any of the things that this guy's saying, you're going to hear all of this stuff so there's 1 billion Catholics in the world. I mean, you're going to hear this every time you go into the Catholic sphere. You're going to hear things like, we should be free. Here are the rules. Here's what you should do. And it's definitely not a one size fits all. I mean, you take a look at the LGBT community.
Yeah.
The entire queer community. So LGBTQ, I'm throwing that in there because I don't want anyone to think I'm being offensive. It's just when I was a kid, you couldn't say queer, but now you can say it. So going back to what he's saying, he's talking about the diabolical lies about saying, if women go and pursue their careers and they ignore their quote unquote biological clock, if they ignore that, and let's say they focus on their career, and then they find themselves in a situation where they are not happy because maybe they want a family, maybe they feel like it's too late, they feel like they made a mistake. I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to tell these people in the audience, here is what I see a lot of bad things happening, unhappy people, based on these, he called them diabolical lies. I don't know if it's a diabolical lie so much as it's maybe, dare I say, kind of a mistake to tell everybody. Because here's the thing, too, is this idea of freedom of choice. There are some people, you need a certain percentage of families. You need a certain percentage of children. We're well below the birth rate or the fertility rate. We're going to, that billionaire, Elon, has said recently, I'm not sure if you like Elon or not, I'm guessing not, but
I don't.
No, and you're gonna tell me why you don't like him. But he says things like one of the greatest obstacles in the future is a decreasing birth rate. Not enough people are having babies.
Yeah.
But what do you say about that? What do you think about that?
Sounds like an argument from 100 years ago.
Okay.
And they called it eugenics, and then we figured out, oh, that's not good, right? I think that the birth rate overall is obviously lower in like Western countries. This is a common issue in like France and Germany. Germans, they're paying Germans to have babies, and having very much a state that they're encouraging that behavior to have more children, because they're concerned of that overall. But I would say that like the end of the day, it's like folks should be able to make the choice whether they want to have babies or not. And if folks make the choice that they want to focus on their career and then feel regret later, that's the choice they made, and they have to live with those choices.
And no one's going to argue about that.
Yeah.
By the way, nobody would ever argue that point that you just made.
Yeah.
Nobody would say you're wrong.
Yeah.
Not Elon, not Harrison Butker. Nobody would say that. They would say, yeah, you made those choices. Just like I tell my kids, oh, you chose to screw around during dinner time. I told you that if you don't eat your food, you're going to go to bed with no dinner. And you can eat tomorrow morning when we wake up. You can have eggs and bacon and toast like we make every morning. You can have that. But then they sit in their beds and they cry that they're hungry.
Yeah.
But because they made that choice.
Yeah. And I think it's obviously it's a different comparison saying like, hey, children and eating, and then like, should you have a baby? Because like, I think that changes a person's trajectory.
It's much more serious.
Much more serious, right? And I feel like if they make the choice to or to not have children, I think that folks should make that decision on their own and not necessarily be encouraged by the government or by like Harrison Butker, right? If you shouldn't have a baby because Harrison Butker says you should.
No, he didn't say that.
No.
He didn't say that.
He said that a lot of women he hopes that to be their calling. He also talked a lot about like the Latin Mass and how you should find a place, like a community that offers the Latin Mass, which, don't get me wrong, I think the Latin Mass is great if that's what you choose to do. But as a Catholic, I don't think that's what you should be focused on, like of moving your
career.
Are you
Catholic?
I was born Catholic.
Okay.
I still identify as Catholic, but I have not been practicing Catholic in terms of like going to Mass weekly. But I am in communion with the one apostolic church. All of that is to say that it's like, I feel like, I don't know, like for example, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
He was talking, Harrison Butker was talking disparagingly of the Biden administration.
He was.
Right?
Yeah, he was.
And I would say one question I would have is, what do you believe is the breakdown of Republicans and Democrats within the Catholic Church?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
And I know the answer to this.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I do.
Can I make a guess?
Yeah, and I would say don't fall for the Dunning-Kruger effect, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I loosely know what you're talking about there.
Okay. That means the
I'm gonna
less
guess.
you know, the more confident that you are.
Okay, so, right. I like that so much. I'm going to use that 5 times this week. So I think that the evangelical right tends to be less Catholic and more non-denominational Christian, and I would think that there would be just in the distribution, I would think that, and this is a guess, okay? Mm-hmm. I would guess that there would be more Democrats as Catholics. Am I right or wrong?
Compared to the Evangelical Church of America?
No. I'm saying, like, was the question, are
Evangelical,
there more Republicans or Democrats in the Catholic Church? Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
I would say more Democrats. Is that right or no?
It is incorrect.
Okay. Tell me.
It's 50-50. Well, I should say, I think it was
That's a trick question.
Trump had 50 and Biden had 49, which to me is like a rounding error based on how many Catholics there are or whatever.
So half and half, okay.
So it's like half and half. It is skewed slightly because a lot of folks in the Latino community are Catholic, and they skew it to be more Democratic than if you're just talking about white Catholics in America, which skew to be more Republican.
Did the Chiefs kicker I can say Harrison Butker, but I like saying the Chiefs kicker. Is that okay?
He's not as fun to say as like the kicker for the Los Angeles Chargers.
What's his name?
His name's Dicker the kicker.
Okay. Did the Chiefs...
I'm like, hey, that's cool.
Did the Chiefs kicker, did he make a mention, and tell me if this is true, if the current president, did he make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally?
It was probably a pro-choice rally, but like, you know, framing it as a pro-abortion.
Well, hold on a second. People who are pro-choice, all of them are okay with abortion. All of them.
Yeah.
All of them are okay with abortion.
Depends on what you I understand.
And at pro-life rallies, not everybody is okay with abortion. So that is a massive defining
for sure.
difference between pro-life and pro-choice.
Yeah.
At pro-choice, they're all okay with abortion at some level, and at pro-life rallies, they are only okay with abortion in certain aspects, and of course, some are not okay at all. Okay, but did Biden make the sign of the cross during the rally?
That was something that Harrison Butker cited, and sounds like something Joe Biden would do.
And why would he do that?
Well, the sign of the cross is largely Catholic execution of things that if there was a prayer that was said, he might conclude a prayer with the sign of the cross. And it would not be uncommon for a prayer to be said at a large public event.
Do you think a prayer was said at the pro-choice rally?
There's a strong, to be clear, like,
we don't know.
The pro-life versus pro-choice, like drawing the line of where that is, it's probably closer to 70-30 than it is 50-50.
But what I'm saying is,
that's why, like, Republicans are are trying to off-focus the abortion talk in 2024, and Democrats are trying to push for it and having more, like, choice of abortion on the ballots in 2024.
Republicans should run
away from the topic.
Absolutely, they should run away from it because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Okay? The Democrats are way infinitely worse, but the Republicans don't understand that you can freeze an embryo. They don't understand that you can't freeze a baby, but you can freeze an embryo. Anyway, I don't want to get into the abortion rabbit hole.
Tommy
I just want to ask you this.
Yeah.
So, maybe the president was making the sign of the cross for all of the dead babies that have been murdered since 1970, whatever. Maybe. You just don't even know. Okay, so listen. This is back kind of towards what Butker was talking about women, because this was firing up some of my female friends. Mm-hmm. Some of my female friends were fired up about this. They were so mad, and they go, "Are you going to talk to David about this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to ask him this question." My question is, what is the AMA, the American Medical Association, what is the general consensus on when a woman begins a geriatric pregnancy? Do you happen to know the age that the AMA states?
I think it's 35.
Okay. When are women in their prime? Don't deflect.
Are you talking about of giving birth? Like when you say like women in their prime, like their prime earning years, their prime birthing years, their like what are you talking? How women look or whatever? Like it's all subjective.
It is all subjective. So when we're talking about the birthing years, can you give me a range of like the earliest year when they're kind of in their prime for conceiving a baby?
Yeah.
Okay. Conceiving life.
You understand that that's a challenge because, as previously stated, as a Catholic at one point, I believe that in a virgin birth, and in no question that Mary would have been less than 18, which would not necessarily jive with 2024.
Do you think she was a virgin?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah, controversial.
All right,
I know.
You psycho.
I know. In this town, believing in Catholic fundamentals can be a challenge.
I gotta tell you,
I'm really oppressed.
I also, I did not believe that Mary was a virgin for most of my life.
Really?
Yes. Even as a Catholic. I'm like, okay, yeah. I didn't believe in transubstantiation.
Okay.
The idea of when the priest raises the host
and turns it into the actual body of Christ.
It goes through a substance change. Mm-hmm. And I believe that now because of quantum physics and the idea of collapsing the wave function. That's why I believe it now.
Okay.
I believe it based on science. I'm a doubting Thomas. I mean, I need Christ to show me the holes in his hands and feet before I believe. Mm-hmm. Okay? But then when you show me, I'm like, oh, okay. And And I went through like some atheistic times in my life where I rejected God. And then I'm like, I mean, God had to show me that he is real. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I'm embarrassed to kind of say that, but
why?
Because I wish I could do it through faith alone. I wish I could just have faith and just say, because my parents told me so, because my parents threw the water on me, that now all of a sudden I can believe everything they tell me.
Isn't that the hope in believing in Thomas, is that Thomas had to see to believe? And like, you were also like Thomas, a biblical figure and someone that had to see to believe. You're just like, I think that there's a blessing in that you had to come to that on your own term. And I think there's a beauty in that in the faith.
Oh man, well said. So if you're saying the geriatric age is 35, that's not fair because you're not saying that. You're quoting the AMA. When are women in their prime birthing years? This goes back to the Chiefs kicker.
Yeah.
Talking about, hey, listen, everybody, there's an order of which to do things. And if all of you are pursuing your careers and you are not family focused, some of you are going to be distraught, mad, angry, resentful, sorrowful, depressed. Some of you are going to just feel terrible. So I ask you, based on what this Chiefs kicker is rambling on about what he thinks, there should be a turn. There should be a slight evolution of thought of the culture of going back towards this family aspect, this familial aspect of being American. Yeah. So when do you think women are generally in their prime for birthing babies?
I don't know, but I would think that 22, which is probably the median age of the audience at that would definitely fall under that.
22.
That being said,
that's a good answer. That's a good answer.
That being said, I just fundamentally believe that you shouldn't have to choose between a family and a career. Why not have both, and just have like a culture and a society understand that there's different phases and seasons in one's life?
Because the government has either intentionally or accidentally killed off the nuclear family by a huge percentage. And I will tell you, even if you don't believe that the government did it or didn't do it, then humans did it. Humans outside of the government. And maybe the government is this rising source of like radiation and like trying its ass off to keep the nuclear family together.
Yeah.
But all of its constituents are not. They're making it fall apart. I don't believe that. I think the government is the new lowercase g God. I really do believe that. I think government is in every aspect of life, from families to look what it did to marriage. I mean, it completely changed all of marriage, and now marriage is not marriage anymore. Marriage is something else. It just is.
What is marriage, Frankie?
Marriage is any two people can sign a contract.
Any two people?
Any two people. I'm sorry.
So if you're 4 years old, you can get married?
No, I'm saying anybody who is legally between the ages of 18 and 150, any two people can get together and sign a contract in a courthouse.
The two consenting adults?
Two consenting adults can sign a social contract, sign a civil union.
Yeah.
That's what the government says marriage is. Well, that's not what I have. That's not what I have with my situation. Is not like that. Okay. I'm in matrimony. I'm in a state of matrimony.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're in a state of matrimony or not. I don't know. But I will say, though, if the government goes in and screws and opens up the lid of the hood of the car and totally rewires the car to make it run with a few cylinders missing, or the car can only run backwards. Maybe it doesn't start anymore. Yeah. Maybe it's just the government wrecked it. The government did over time a ton of bad things. And I think this Chiefs kicker,
it's trying to go
this
back.
son of a bitch,
tried to go
came
back.
in and is saying, here's what he's saying. He goes, you know what? I'm the Chiefs kicker, and I'm Catholic. You guys are Catholic. We're at this college. I'm going to tell you that I don't think we're not going down a good path as a society. And if any of you are Catholic and any of you are getting pulled in the wrong direction, I'm here to tell you that I'm giving my opinion because I'm the Chiefs kicker. Otherwise, I don't think he'd be invited.
and he wants us to go back to pre-Vatican II. Are you signing up for that?
Oh, you mean when like the priest faces the altar instead of the congregation?
and speaks in Latin.
I mean, I have no idea what the heck that priest is saying. I have no idea. Okay, St. Rose here in Quincy.
They do it, and I'm like, this is fantastic. I love that they do that. And that's
So
awesome.
much incense.
Yeah,
And the women are covering their heads like they should. No, I'm kidding.
it's
Cover your face. No, I'm joking. I don't believe that. The church that I go to, whenever I attend Mass, and evidently, according to our pastor, it's not enough. Oh, do you know about the 51% rule now in Quincy?
what is the 51%?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, is that the controversy that I heard about?
The 51% rule is if you go to a certain parish in Quincy and if you can't prove that you go to Mass 51% of the time, your tuition essentially doubles or goes to, I'm sorry, you don't get the discount.
So you 100% support this because that's a private institution making choices?
I don't 100% support that.
Oh.
I don't support that. I'm like so mad about it.
So you don't believe private institutions should be able to choose how they dictate their...
No, I'm saying that if Catholic churches in Quincy start forcing the masses to go to Mass a certain percentage of the time, and people go in there knowing that here's what the price used to be, but if you don't actually physically go there, we're going to hold you accountable, hold your feet to the fire, you're going to pay this higher number of dollars.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that is going to systematically, because humans are just generally lazy, procrastinating people, you're going to drive attendance away. I don't think it'll drive attendance upward. It might. I could be wrong about that. But that's kind of a separate topic from what this Chiefs kicker's rambling about. But no, go ahead.
Well, I would argue that, like, first of all, it's not like the majority, right? Because the vast majority goes to public school in Quincy.
We're talking about the parents and students inside a Catholic school.
Yeah. So, like, if they choose to, like, and if it's a Catholic school, shouldn't the majority of the folks be Catholic anyway?
Oh, you're starting to sound like my father and my wife and the priest and all the teachers. Why are you siding with all of my friends and family?
I mean, does that, like, I told you earlier that an espresso martini should controversially contain espresso.
Your espresso martini is making me sweat. It's making me talk too fast.
Shouldn't a Catholic school have Catholic students in it?
Yes, yes. And the Catholic schools, all of their students go to Mass during the week at St. Peter's. It's every Wednesday at 8:30. And you can go in there right off the street. You can open the doors and see hundreds and hundreds of kids staring, looking, absorbing the liturgy of the word, the gospel. They're giving signs of peace to each other. They're shaking hands. They're hugging. They're singing their hearts out. It's incredible. It's actually kind of a small miracle.
I agree.
And it costs an arm and a leg to get them to do that.
Well, and Father Leo Enloe was a gift. Like, he's a phenomenal leader.
He's awesome.
And I would, like, I mean, when I came to Quincy, he was one of the folks I talked to, and he was phenomenal in terms of helping me in my pastoral journey. And like, I just appreciate all of his insight, and I thought that he gives a phenomenal homily, and I think that he's got great values from everything that I've understood for him. So, like, yeah, I think that when you see that, it is a small miracle. And I also think that if parents, because, like, let's be clear about this, like, overall from a student, like, shaping of a student, a majority of the shaping is going to be done by the parents at home.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't the school or the church enforce that the folks at home are getting the same message on Sundays as the students are Monday through Friday and at Mass on Wednesday?
I can't argue with that.
Like, I mean, if that's the choice,
I can't argue with that.
It's. I think it's at the end of the day, like, and a lot of folks will say with Catholicism, arguing that the transubstantiation that you were talking about, it's like that is a deal breaker with being Catholic, right?
Oh my gosh!
Fundamentally, right?
It's almost like denying the resurrection. If you don't believe, if you're Catholic, to your point, sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you.
No.
Transubstantiation means it's a term coined by the Catholic Church in which the bread and wine are only under the appearance of bread and wine. And upon the consecration and upon the hard praying and asking of the congregation and everyone there, and the priest and the traditions, and you're begging Christ to please come to you in that moment. Please. No, well, that's what it is. It's like from a quantum mechanical theory.
Yeah.
It's the idea of like, let's say time is just an illusion. Christ was, Christ is, Christ always is. So if you believe and you're able to do that, so then boom, the miracle happens.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants it to so badly, then it just is because there was some kind of promise, which really, really interesting. Do you know anything about collapsing the wave function? So
No.
if you look at something, it behaves one way, but when you cast your glance and your view someplace else, that it changes. That Einstein came up with it in special theory of relativity, William Russell. As a matter of fact, in 2013 or 2014, there were some scientists in Geneva, and they came up with this kind of proof that when you look at something, it actually changes. And the whole time in science, we were kind of taught that when you change your perspective, then you change.
Yeah.
What science is saying is that not only do you change when you change your perspective, but the object that you are fixed on changes.
Yeah.
And that is very hard to swallow.
Like
but
if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Only if someone is there to hear it, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Well, no, which, by the way, if a tree falls in the forest and there isn't anything or anyone, there's nothing there to hear it, no, it does not make a sound.
Okay.
It doesn't. You have to have a witness. A squirrel can be a witness.
Yeah.
Another tree can be a witness, because you have to have, like, for example, like in a vacuum where there's no sound in space, there's nothing.
Correct.
There's no thing.
Correct.
So it's very difficult for sound to travel in that kind of a vacuum.
Yep.
There is no thing. If nothing is there to hear it, does it make a sound? No, it does not.
In a vacuum.
Yeah, right. But
In space,
that's what we're
sound
talking
can.
about.
In space, sound can technically travel. It's just dampened because it's not a correct medium to do so.
Correct, and that's why you need so much. That's why you need light. That's why
You
light
need
is so
light.
amazing. Okay, moving on
Yeah.
to. Do you want to?
Bitcoin.
You want to talk about Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's at an all-time high. You should be hammering me at this point.
Okay, a couple things. If
It's like
anybody,
it's $70,000 at the point of this recording.
where is Bitcoin exactly? You're right. It's 70 grand. Okay, so that's 70 grand for a Bitcoin, but we're not going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about how you divide Bitcoin. So for any of our listeners out there that's thinking to themselves, "Gosh dang it, I was so enraged by Frankie's BS about the women and the birth rate and the geriatric pregnancy age. I want him to go back to that, and now he's talking about Bitcoin. I'm turning the pot off." I will tell you this. This is the greatest chance I've ever had on this podcast for the entire time I've been doing this podcast. This is the greatest opportunity I've ever had to talk about Bitcoin. I've had a lot of really great people on.
You had Ryan Hincamper. He just talked about it.
We talked about it a little bit, but we didn't get to some meat of it.
Okay.
And Hincamper knows this. He knows a lot about Bitcoin. But one of the things, is there anything that you want to say about it before I get into this small
Yeah,
rant?
I think like one question I would have is like, I have some money here that I'd like to propose to give to you in exchange for goods.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I have
Exciting.
10,000 dong right there.
10,000 what?
Dong.
Oh, this is Vietnamese currency.
Yeah, will you get me some dinner with that? After this, like, can we go out and get dinner? And
Oh, I can't do that because the Americans have a monopoly here in their country with one currency.
Okay.
So I can't use this.
Okay. So why?
And if you were from Vietnam,
Yeah.
I would have to insult you and tell you that your money's not any good here.
Okay.
I've got 10,000 dong in my hand.
So what? Yeah. What gives that value?
So it has virtually no value here, and I don't know what the exchange rate is. Do you know?
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant to this conversation.
Correct.
This doesn't have any. It's not liquid at all. We can go to a currency exchange,
It's the definition of liquid. It's cash.
but it's not liquid here.
It's
Very liquid in Vietnam.
I would disagree. So yeah, it's more liquid in other spots on this world, such as Vietnam. That being said, yeah, the value of 10,000 dong is given by the people around it, right?
Yes.
Is you get to determine how much this is worth. Are you willing to, like, if this was a $10 million bill in the United States, and I said, hey, would you quit your job for this? You'd be like, yeah, no problem. Like, can do.
Yes. I will say, so the reason, agreed.
Yeah.
100%.
Because money is given its value by the people that we all agree to it, right?
It never used to be that
100%.
way.
It's always been that way.
It was, no, it used to be backed by gold.
No, because before there was the gold standard, before FDR switched us off the gold standard, there was panic after panic after panic after panic after panic of, is my money worth anything? Because banks would go lose the gold or whatever, and people would go to cash it in, and then they wouldn't have any money there to back it up. And like that, fundamentally, I think like Roosevelt saved the banking system by taking us off the gold
No,
system.
Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1972 through the Bretton Woods Accords.
But I think that like when I look at the value of gold, like, would you prefer to be able to take your money and go to a bank and say, hey, I'd like some shavings of gold with this?
Okay, so now we are back on the same page.
And the answer
Now
is
we're back.
no.
Okay, so
because there were banks all around. You'd have the Bank of Quincy, and you'd have the Bank of Illinois, and you'd have the Bank of Adams County, and you'd have the Bank of the East Coast, and Bank of Mississippi, and like all these banks, you weren't sure if any of them had any validity to them. So my question is, do you know anything about the panics? Like, did you ever see It's a Wonderful Life and what happens when they say, hey, like, we're not sure if the Bailey Brothers Building and Loan, that they don't have your money on the account. And like what happens is, like, obviously it's the wedding day, they have all this cash or whatever. If that were to go down, the bank examiner shuts everything down and everyone loses all of their value in their homes and the loans, and then obviously the bad guy gets to buy everything up. And like what I would say is, like, anyone that's saying we need to get off of the dollar is completely ignoring the entire history prior to the establishment of the Federal Reserve and saying, oh my goodness, like, all these panics are occurring, and takes away from the global standard, which, you're right, this is not worth almost anything in the United States. And like
you have to go, well, you have to be near or at a currency exchange that will exchange dong for USD.
Correct.
I love saying dong.
Me too. That being said, like, the dong here isn't worth more than $5, right? This, even if in the exchange, if we were to go over, it's not worth more than $5.
Well, because it's almost it almost becomes worthless in that you and I are going to spend $5 on the bus fare to get to the currency exchange, and the currency exchange is going to charge us $7 to exchange 10,000 dong into USD. To your point,
but like, look around the world, right? What is literally the world standard when it comes to money? What is the global standard that all other dollar, like, everything is compared to the dollar, right? Across the board.
Every currency is tied to USD for the most part. There are some exceptions. Because
the United States has this exceptional nature of its economy, and it's like the number one, like, global standard. Regardless of our input or our desire to change that or whatnot, the U.S. dollar is the thing that makes the entire world go round.
Well, it's the global reserve currency.
It's the global reserve currency, right?
And it is the global reserve currency because the United States are back-to-back World War champions.
Correct. And I would add that, like, if you look at Bitcoin, my question to folks is always, like, that are really into Bitcoin is, one, is it a form of currency, or is it a business proposition?
Neither.
And the problem is they don't choose, because if it's a form of currency, I always ask them, how much is it worth? And they say $70,000. And I'm like, as it turns out, the dollar is still your standard. Forget it. Like, everything that you say about, like, oh, like, it's the U.S. Treasury is going to break down and the Federal Reserve is corrupt or whatever. I'm like, if you still base it as like that, if you don't say my house is worth 3 Bitcoin or whatever it is, you're still using the dollar as the standard. And because the dollar has been largely stable over the last, say, 100 years, that's the standard for the world.
Whoa. Did you just say that the U.S. dollar was standard or was stable?
Stable for the last 100 years.
You think it's stable?
Yes, and anyone that's
No.
saying anything different doesn't recognize any
No.
other
No.
currency in the history of mankind.
No. The United States dollar has lost 99% of its value over the past 100 years.
Correct, but it's been stable in the sense that it's had that like 2 to 3% inflation regularly and somewhat like stably, which is frankly, that's what you want in a currency anyway. You want to have 2 to 3% like inflation for the economy to just function.
But what happens if you get 10, 20, 30, and 500% inflation?
Yeah, then you become like Argentina of
No.
the 1980s and you're in trouble.
Right. So you can't stop that from happening. You cannot stop it from happening. What you need is, if you want to stick with an inflationary currency, then stick with it. It's like this. Would you, and this is a personal finance question, would you keep 10,000, let's say you've got a certain amount of money in the bank and you have your emergency fund taken care of. Would you on purpose, as a businessman, would you keep large amounts of cash in your savings account or your checking account?
It depends.
Okay. For me, it does not.
Okay.
For me, it does not. I will not keep any USD past my emergency fund in any kind of savings account or checking account, because the currency that I'm keeping in there, it's losing value by the second, by the day, by the week. What happens is,
which, by the way, that's the point of the intentional inflation, is to force you to invest it, and that's what keeps the economy running.
and I think the rich love this idea, and they're all on board with it, but it hurts the poor so badly, and hurts the middle class so badly, that it's wrecking their lives. So this idea of having this inflationary currency where, okay, if you have this perfect inflationary percentage of 1-2% a year, if you can maintain that over time, and wages are skyrocketing past the inflation rates, skyrocketing past CPI and PPI, if everything works perfectly. The problem is, we have a central planner in this country that either on accident or intentionally is screwing up the entire thing. We've got the fractional banking, which seems to be working.
Federal Reserve.
I'm talking about the
central banker.
The Federal Reserve is making terrible mistakes. The executive officer of the last 8 or 9 presidents are making terrible mistakes. It's a bipartisan issue. I will say, Bitcoin is a deflationary store of value. Okay, people think you were talking about this standard, this stable coin. There's a book written called The Bitcoin Standard. It's a relatively famous book. Anybody who reads it, what they will do is, just like how what's that movie that came out a year or two ago that was about child trafficking? And people say it was like Freedom. Was it the Freedom? I don't. Was it Cry of Freedom? I don't know. It's some human trafficking movie.
I have no idea.
That when you watch it, you never want your children to be out of your sight, because you're like,
fear in
you
you.
have to watch this movie. And it's like, oh, by the way, I didn't see the movie, but I mean, I let my but but I'm still scared of someone taking my children. I've got this fear. But when it comes to currency and money and smart money, and what money actually is, you want money to be hard, not soft. Our currency that we're currently using, the government has a monopoly on it. Okay, imagine a world where the government says, okay, we've got a handful of different currencies you can use. California seems to be using this currency. It's available anywhere in the state, but California gets to print it. It's the Californian dollar, and New York's got its dollar, and not all the states have their own dollars, because not all the states have their own federal reserves, because there's 12 of them in the country.
Which is
and
what you're describing what it was before.
So what I'm saying is, the country there's a monopoly on currency. What Bitcoin is, it is a turn away from all of the things that are bad about currency, and it's channeled into what is known as a digital store of value. It's digital gold. It's an agreement based on, if you're in New York and you're a rich man and you're standing in line at Starbucks, you're about to pay $12 for a coffee, you are not going to be irritated that you can't pay for your coffee with a piece of your own physical property.
No, because
You
you
won't.
probably just swipe your phone or a card or whatever.
But in the land of a place where Bitcoin becomes the digital store of value, one of the problems that people are trying to figure out
So an
is...
imaginary land.
What's that?
An imaginary land where Bitcoin is the store of value.
Well, right now, the store of value, if you're talking about a currency, there's only one, and that's the U.S. dollar. Okay? It's a terrible store of value. Would you agree?
No.
Okay.
I think it's been largely historically stable and good and while not perfect or whatever, it's a lot better than the alternative of Bitcoin. And which I would add that, like, what percentage of your overall net worth is in cryptocurrency?
A percentage of my net worth?
Yeah.
Oh, probably 1%.
Okay. And what percentage of your net worth are you talking about cryptocurrency versus the other 99%?
What do you mean?
So, like, I feel like cryptocurrency gets way too much talk.
Whoa, hold on. We're not talking about cryptocurrencies.
Okay. All right. Bitcoin specifically.
We're not talking about cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
We're not talking about Polkadot and
Okay.
Ethereum and XRP
And Dogecoin.
and Doge. Those are cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is not.
It's not a cryptocurrency.
Not really. It uses SHA-256 cryptography, but it is not a cryptocurrency. It is the only in the history of the world, it's the only immutable piece of technology that's ever been created. The only one. It cannot be changed. It's forked in the past, but at this point,
So
it pretty much
Ethereum can't be either?
can't be what?
Like you said, it can't be changed?
It can't be immutable. So Bitcoin, what I mean by immutable is anything that happens on the ledger. Like if you go to your bank and you have some type of like problem between yourself and the teller, you give the teller $100, but she puts it in as $10. And you go to your phone and you're like, oh my gosh, I only have $10. It's because the teller made a mistake. You cannot, that is not an immutable trait
Correct.
of the dollar, okay?
Correct. It's
soft.
I think the blockchain, which I think is probably more valuable than specifically Bitcoin.
Okay.
The blockchain does that, where it creates all these blocks that has verification of changes that occur. So that way, when something happens and the teller fat fingers the wrong number in there or whatever, because it can happen positive too, that there can be a deposit of $1,000 when you only deposited $100, right? But the blockchain prevents that because it creates all of these blocks that have to occur succinctly to enable to execute at the same time for that.
Yeah,
change to happen
there's
on the
thousands
ledger.
of computers working at the speed of light to confirm the transactions. So one of the things that Bitcoin does, and I'm going to give you an example of something. Let's say you've got door number 1 and door number 2. And door number 1, there's a car behind door number 1. Behind door number 2, there's another car, okay? I'm going to give you one of these cars, okay? And door number 1, I'm going to tell you that the general market agrees that that car is worth about $5,000. Behind door number 2, the market, not me, the market agrees that that car is worth about $50,000. Now, I'm going to gift you one of the cars. You can't ask me what make or model it is. You can't ask me how many miles. Can't ask me the color. You can't ask me anything about it. All you can ask me is, what does the market think each car is worth? And I say 5,000 and 50,000. Now, you're going to choose one of those two cars. And if you're like most people, you will choose door number
2.
Why?
Because you just said one is worth $5,000 and one is worth $50,000.
And that's what's going to happen with the entire world with Bitcoin. Here's what's going to happen.
I disagree because, like, I think to myself, like, I can't get my grandparents to open email. The changes that society makes over time is a lot slower. And I believe what it's going to do is similar to what, like, Jack Bogle did with mutual funds. I think that this is what's going to happen with Visa, MasterCard, is eventually someone's going to get into that because the exchange that's happening that you described, the businessman in New York, that they're just waving a card over or waving their phone over, it's all done on the credit market. And the credit system is only to be flawed because it costs so much, particularly for the vendor, to execute. But as soon as there comes in someone that lowers what that rate is and offers the same security and stability, all of a sudden the value of any cryptocurrency in the blockchain goes way down, right? Because the value of Bitcoin means that the exchange of goods, there's no friction to the exchange of goods.
No,
when I use a credit card, the friction is the 6.5% or whatever that is.
No, there is friction when they're using Bitcoin. There is. And when you talk about other cryptocurrencies, we don't need it. I mean, so there's the Bitcoin example. Bitcoin, there's a lot of friction, okay? There are other cryptocurrencies that have less friction, but this is a separate topic, and we're going to bore each other if we start talking about all the pros and cons of each one.
Yeah.
There's about 14,000 cryptocurrencies. There's only one at the top that's in a class of its own.
Yep.
And then there's all of these like sub-smart contract,
Yep.
frictionless, faster than the speed of light, faster than the SWIFT system. And as a matter of fact, the United States government, through the SEC, really, really, really wants to get their paws on this stuff and develop digital coins. But my point to you about the reason why you chose door number 2 and you chose the vehicle that was worth more money is because price is information. And it's just like this. I don't know if you bought Amazon at $5. Did you buy Amazon stock at $5?
No,
I
I wish.
hated it at $5. Hated it. Hated it at $100. I hated it at $200. I love it at $800.
Yeah.
I love it. Just like all the financial advisors here in town, historically, have been scared to death of the funny money, the fake, whatever, the internet currency. This is fake. It's not real.
Yeah.
Just like when I was a senior in high school and the great Pat Lask told me to go down to the computer room and we're going to get you what is known as an electronic mail address. I'm like, that's stupid. No one's going to use it. Just like the beginning of the internet. The internet was invented in the 70s, came alive in the 80s, but didn't go public until 91. It took 12 years.
Yeah.
It took 12 years for people to agree that you should make seatbelts mandatory in cars. There is a slow move. Bitcoin's only been alive for about 13 years. Here's what's going to happen. You hate it at $5. You hate it at $100. You hate it at $70,000. You're going to hate it at $150. When it goes to $200,000, you're going to hate it. When it goes to $300, it's going to come back down. Hold on. Do you know how it trades? It goes up, like a roller coaster, and comes screaming down. It's total blood in the streets. It comes down. It gets cut in half. Bitcoin's not stable. It's the antithesis of stable, just like the formation of the earth, just like the formation of anything. Email wasn't stable. The internet wasn't stable. Listen, when like your little kids, they're not stable. They can't live on their own.
No.
They're not. Your kids aren't going to live on their own until like 32 years old. Okay, like, no offense, mine aren't either. What Bitcoin does, Bitcoin is hard money. When it hits 200,000, 300,000, when it completely consumes the gold market, do you know what's bigger, the silver market or the Bitcoin market?
Today, probably the Bitcoin market.
It's bigger. It's bigger than silver.
But let me ask you this:
It's the seventh largest
I don't
asset
understand.
class
You're saying
in the
it's
world.
a hard money, but it's
hard.
It's not hard. It's soft money.
No,
And then
fiat currency is soft.
And then second of all, you describe like you're saying that Amazon. Did you want to buy it at $500 and $300, whatever it is per stock, right? That's a business. Right, that is something that's going to add value if you invest into it. That there's going to be profits and loss, and you as the owner get to enjoy either one of those, right? But like as a money, as a currency, its value is determined whether you believe it, and he believes it, and she believes it, and they believe it. Like, right? It's our collective belief that this has value. And until people lose 100% confidence globally in the U.S. dollar, then I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity for another coin or
So I will tell you,
paper money to take its place.
I have lost confidence in the U.S. dollar.
Okay.
And everybody who studies that particular asset class, they do so either because they have lost the amount of people, the amount of poor. Do you think the poor are increasing their confidence in the dollar, in their wages, or decreasing their confidence?
I think the poor don't think about asset classes like paper money.
Yeah, they
that's
do.
more of a rich thing that people do.
No. You need to get in touch with the poor. Let me tell you what the poor think. The poor are pissed that McDonald's French fries went from $1 to $4. The poor are pissed that they used to be able to get a loaf of bread for $1. They're pissed that that milk went from $2 to $4.
Or that their incomes went from $12 to $15 over the last 20 years.
Yeah, wages are not going up. No, there's nothing about their dollars that make them feel good. Okay, they don't have all this money sitting on the sidelines to buy anything. I mean, they're all pining for Cadillacs, yet the rich are driving Honda Accords into the ground. Everybody's priorities are upside down. And I'm telling you this, Bitcoin is going to be one of those things where it will slowly consume market after market. And as the naysayers are shorting it, pushing it down, it'll rise. And there's no stopping it. It cannot be stopped. People have tried. People have tried to hack it. They can't hack SHA-256. They can't. It's immutable. It is public information on the blockchain. It is the most confident thing It's the best invention since the internet. And the idea of taking blockchain technology and overlapping it on Web 2, Web 3 developers, developing dApps, smart money contracts, like as the governments go and try to build their own digital coins to turn their money off. It's just like going from an internal combustion engine to a digital car. The reason why I want to hang on to my combustion engines is because I know the government wants to turn my car off when I eat too much beef. And just like Bitcoin, when they try to turn off my money, they will not be able to turn it off. They're going to have to disrupt every network in the world. There would have to be like a near 99% nuclear war fallout where all the machines and all the Bitcoin nodes get destroyed. You get the last word.
I guess my question would be is like, who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have never seen any invention in the world. I don't know who invented the wheel. I don't know who discovered fire. And I don't know who invented Bitcoin.
So who has the most Bitcoin?
Satoshi Nakamoto.
So if all of a sudden, like, say, this guy wanted to, or girl wanted to release, or whoever they are.
I'm sure it's a man, but go ahead.
Wanted to release any sort of like value and cash in on this, could they?
Sure, but in 13, 14,
What
15
would that
years,
do to the value?
he has never once touched his hard wallet.
Correct.
He's got 1 million coins sitting in his wallet. It has never moved.
Yeah.
So either he is the smartest man alive, or he's dead.
Or the dumbest man alive. Or who knows?
David Samuels, thank you so much.
Thank you. Hopefully this lasts
I
us 2
really
weeks.
like having you on. You inspire me. You're super smart. You're fast. You're witty, and you're awesome, dude.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thanks.
Frankie.
Bye.